Thanks for choosing this free Anfield Index podcast. If you'd prefer to listen to this or any of our other shows without adverts, then now's the time to check out Anfield Index Pro. With AI Pro, you can supercharge your entire listening experience. You'll not only get all of our podcasts without the ads, but you'll have them far faster with our Quick Publish feature available exclusively for subscribers. AI Pro also puts you in the heart of our sound studio, with an option to listen to many of our shows live and interact with the podcasters in real time as the shows are recording. Upgrading couldn't be easier. AI Pro is available on all popular podcast platforms, and we have our own apps for Apple and Android. Just head on over to AnfieldIndexPro.com and get started today.
Good afternoon, ladies and gents, and welcome to another post-conference presser. And it feels a huge one this week because it's the Chelsea game pending tomorrow. Klopp has only just finished his press conference, maybe not too long ago because there is an embargo, so we'll have to see what that brings. But Chelsea in less than 24 hours, so the excitement's building. My name's Dave Davis. I am joining you not from a field in rural Ireland, but to be honest, from a cold and pretty freezing Edinburgh. And it looks like Liverpool will be a similar temperature tomorrow. I'm very pleased to say I'm joined this week by Tom Rowe. Tom, how are we?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to join you for a big one.
Good stuff. Well, we'll see if you still feel the same after you've been grilled and asked to make your predictions, Tom, in all honesty. So we will get right into it. So we'll do the usual, people. So we'll go through Klopp's comments, what he said in the presser. We'll look back to Wolves' clues because, hey, we won a game, so we need to talk about that a little bit. We'll talk about Chelsea's threats, and we're not talking buying players all the time. We'll have a look at our formation and what we think the lineup Klopp will go with for the game. And then Tom will have his stab at beat the host. So let's get right into it, Tom. An interesting presser, realistically. So almost felt like I suppose I'll call it a reflective one. A lot of talk about his 1,000 games in charge, people asking for his experience and advice to younger self. A lot of talk, I should say, as well, about Chelsea and linked to the natural talk of transfers and investments. I suppose looking back at that, I know it's only a short time to reflect. How would you describe Klopp's mood in that presser?
I'm probably just a little bit less testy than last week. You could see that obviously the frustrations are still there in many departments, but I think he still managed to have a couple of pops at the press, which he likes to do. But yeah, I think in general you can see there's still a lot of thought there. There's a lot of kind of consciousness of just still trying to figure things out, still trying to. I mean, we have something to build on from the other day and how he's going to go about that. And Chelsea's a tough task, so I'm sure he's got a lot to focus on. So yeah, very thoughtful, like you said. Yeah,
I'd agree. I think it's funnily enough, when Liverpool are winning, Klopp tends to be in a cheerier mood, doesn't he? When it's not going too well, the two correlate. So yeah, we'll see how he is the one after this is maybe a key indicator. I think we've got to talk about it, Tom, because for all the troubles there's been recently, it is right to reflect at times and sort of celebrate certain things. And naturally, with 1,000 competitive games in charge, that's a heck of an achievement. So he was asked about that in the presser. He said, it's not all been good, but they've been going in the right direction. He never really thought about it too much, which is understandable. And he talked about how he's really blessed with his three clubs, thinking obviously of Mainz, Dortmund and ourselves.
Yeah,
I suppose a bit of reflection time for Jurgen Klopp at Liverpool. Thinking personally, Tom, when you look back or when you think about it, what would you say is your favourite game you've had with Klopp in charge?
Gosh, it's difficult when you've lived your best years under his era as a Liverpool fan. Like, where do I start? I mean, when you think of like the obvious ones, I think you've got to say Barcelona.
Yeah,
it stands out. For me personally, from an obvious one standpoint, it'd probably be the Dortmund game because I was there, and I left that night knowing I'll probably never go to a better game of football in my life. And I was there that night with a friend who was a Liverpool fan, and he was like, "Damn, so I'm probably never going to see a better football game than that." And I'm not even a Liverpool fan. And then I'd say like the not so obvious one that always kind of like when I'm thinking of the best Klopp games, it always just comes straight to mind, which is the City home game in the 18-19 season in the Champions League. There was so much build up and so much anticipation. There was nerves because it's City, and you think, God, we can't let them get one over in the Champions League. We absolutely battered them, and that always comes to mind. I love that one. Yeah,
it's probably tough to sort of think of any others. The only other one, and actually when I'm saying the only other one, it might even be my top one of the Klopp era I can remember, is the United game when Salah got the last minute winner in the 2-0 victory in the title winning season. Yeah. I think it was almost, being honest, it wasn't an amazing game. It almost was more about that moment, and when that went in, just the let off. It felt like we're going to actually win this, no problem at all. So that's probably up there. But yeah, for all the, let's call it the nonsense talk there's been recently, let's not pretend this man's given us the greatest nights of our life quite often. So absolutely, yeah, right to celebrate it. But back to the current moment in charge, which might not be as reflective. He was asked, interestingly, and I like the way the journo phrased this, half time in the season. So how do you assess it? What would you look at it? I like this question, to be honest. And he talked about 3 key things: about demanding more consistency, which probably understandable, defend at a higher level, which we hadn't done often enough, probably agree with that as well, and the need to create chances. Yeah, probably 3 key things, I'd say, and probably a fair summary for a half-time report for me. Yeah. Do you agree with that?
Are you that person who has everything? The coolest merch and those must-have fan threads? Well, over at our Anfield Index shop, we've gone that extra mile when it comes to pimping up your Liverpool collection. From our popular range of bespoke design t-shirts, sweaters, hoodies and hats, to our signature edition mugs, prints and coasters, all provided with fast worldwide shipping. We have something for every red. We also stock official LFC merchandise and are licensed with the Premier League and UEFA to sell official iron-on shirt badges and sleeve patches. As a listener to this podcast, you can get 10% off everything with coupon code AIPRO10. Just head over to AnfieldIndex.shop or find us on Etsy by searching for Anfield Index.
I do. And there was one word he used in particular, which was, he said about defending together, and then he said everybody, and he put emphasis on that, which to me kind of pointed at it's something that we all talk about kind of constantly, and it's about the midfield, and I think it's an obvious issue this season where people have been able to just get through that, and it doesn't matter how well or in what form our back four is in. If the midfield is letting people have a free run at our defence and trying to play the way we do and press high up the pitch, it's going to be teams going to have a field day like they had. So I think him saying that and putting emphasis on everybody as a unit, not the back four defending. 11 men playing the way we need to play, which is our best form of defence. I think that was an obvious sign that the stuff that I think we're very aware of, and kind of in reflection of Wolves was a lot better. So yeah, hopefully something to build on.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, and you're right, because he even linked Wolves in, as he kind of mentioned it in the answer as an example. I agree with everything you said there, and yeah, very much a team ethos that pressing from the front, everyone doing their job, because like you said, there have been some glaring weaknesses, if that's the right phrase, this season. But half-time, as he said, half-time was asked. So let's see what happens in the second half. One area it would be remiss of us not to mention was almost an old friend of Jurgen Klopp's, Carl Markham, who's had a tough time in the press conferences recently. But I asked his question very well, because obviously if he'd asked just about transfers, he'd have got his head bitten off. We all know that. But he asked specifically, I like the way he did this, he linked it to Chelsea, he linked it to investment, didn't specifically use the word transfers, to almost led him there quite well, personally, I thought. Yeah. So he talked about this in depth. This is probably the one I suspect will grab a lot of the headlines from the conference. So can't see investment stopping in reference to other clubs. So in the future, so we have to do it. An interesting comment. very much believe in coaching, developing and team building 100%, which we probably expected. That's very much a Klopp ethos.
Yeah.
Used a double negative here. Cannot not spend or we have a problem. Very sort of pointed and distinct comments. What did you take from that, Tom?
I mean, he gave like a classic Klopp laugh as soon as he mentioned Chelsea and the word spending. Just kind of broke out into a classic Klopp laugh. And, I always find it interesting when he kind of says about, he's a coach first, development first coach and that sort of thing, which, I mean, we can't really argue against based on the last 7 years. But I do wonder sometimes if that ethos would be slightly different if he had more resources to tap into. But at the same time, I imagine it's a bit of both. If he had more resources to tap into, maybe taps into buying more kind of younger talent that he can continue to do what he's done. So it's not foreign to think that's what Klopp's all about. It's not surprised to hear him say it. But yeah, also kind of mentioning on if like investment's not going to stop. No, it's not. It's based on what we thought was happening 5 years ago was ludicrous. What we thought was happening 10 years ago, we thought was ludicrous in terms of spending. It's not stopped. And now we're looking at 80, 100 million pound players of the new 30, 50 million pound players over the last 10 years. So, yeah, I mean, it kind of points more to the fact that, if we can be a good team, but if we want to really compete, I'm sure Klopp knows it. We know it. We have to be in a position where we can react. And we have to be able to compete for these players as well. And I don't think anyone expects us to spend 500 million in 6 months.
Yeah.
But a bit more than what we're doing, I think would have gone a long way.
I'd agree with that. I think the one thing we'll see, and I could be wrong on this, but for my sort of 2 pence, I think people will take those comments and run with them how they want. I think if you're a FSG out type of person, and we know they exist, especially in the social media stratosphere, it's easy to use that comment, isn't it? Oh, it's Klopp attacking the owners, saying they're not backing in, we need to spend. It's easy to interpret it that way. It's easy, like you said as well. He's mentioned about the need to, he talked about FSG taking more risks as well, so they can be used in that essence. It just has a feeling you can almost interpret those how you wish, or take the fact to suit your theory, if that's the right phrase. So it will be interesting on the headlines, but I did like that sentiment. Still, it's the key at the end of the day. As you said, if we don't invest, we won't compete. So there's a clear message in that sense. So yeah, definitely an interesting presser. And I did mention it at the top of the programme, but just in case anyone did miss it, there is an embargo. So interesting, because the last embargo was, he talks about quite a few things in depth. They've not always been the most exciting, so we'll have to see. But there is definitely an embargo for tonight. So we'll see what happens at 10:30. But we'll almost go back in time a bit to a game we actually won, Tom. Wolves. We actually won a game. Sounds incredible in the current climate. But heck of a night, wasn't it? 1-0, 8 changes as well from Brighton. Very distinct. So one thing I always laugh at as well, the Twitter reaction to 8 changes. There were a few meltdowns with numerous youngsters coming in, and we're going to have to talk about those youngsters, particularly one, a Harvey Elliott wonder strike. I think we'll phrase it that way, for the victory. I think one thing again, and I liked a lot of things in this press conference, so I'm not going to shy away from saying it again. He was asked specifically about Stefan, good old Badge, and his performance, and mentioning, what does that mean for him? And he also mentioned in the press conference that Wolves, as we said before, using that as an example of the things we have to do, when he was asked about that half-time report. So, yeah, a really interesting game for so many reasons. I mean, when you look back at it now, it's not been that long ago, less than a week. How do you actually rate the team's performance from that night?
In one word, I'd probably just say better. And I'm not going to get carried away by it. I mean, there was a lot of elements, but I think, even Klopp touched upon it, that it was better, but then there were elements, towards the end of the game, we were scrapping a little bit to, even though they didn't really create the big chances, we were still scrapping a bit to kind of fight, keep them at arm's length, and to stop them from being able to create the opportunity to send it to extra time, which Klopp said obviously it wouldn't have been ideal and wouldn't have been his favourite.
Hello, I'm here to annoy you. I'm here to annoy you into listening to more of me and more of others on EPL Index. We don't just have the Anfield Index stuff. We've got EPL Index as well, which covers the entirety of the Premier League. And we have 3 podcasts and a whole bunch of really good writing on EPLindex.com. The podcasts are my own Two-Footed podcast, which is every day at 4 p.m., Monday through Friday, covering the whole league. We have A Tad Predictable, hosted by Tadiwa. You know Tadiwa, he does Anfield Index. He presents A Tad Predictable before every Premier League match week. And then Kevin DeVries and his crew on the EPL Roundtable, they're every week after the Premier League match week. So make sure you listen to everything we're doing on EPL Index and follow us there on Twitter at EPL Index. Thank you. Bye-bye.
So, yeah, I'm not going to get carried away with it, but there's definitely a lot of elements that I did enjoy. And there was little moments where you kind of thought, it felt like you was watching Liverpool again, the Liverpool we're used to seeing. So it was nice. There was elements, there was individual performances I really enjoyed. Stefan being one of them, I thought he was brilliant. And yeah, I mean, as far as the Wolves performance goes, it's one of those things. I think it's almost tomorrow might be the marker whether that's going to be something to build on, because I feel like this season there's been a couple of times off the back of bad results where we've stepped up, put a good performance forward, and there's been like a couple of opportunities where we had something to build on and then missed that opportunity, where we've reverted back to like the bad habits and some of the systematic issues that have caused us so many problems. So I'm hoping that it's this doesn't end up being a missed opportunity to kind of build on something where we're starting to see the good stuff we recognise.
Yeah, I'd agree with all of that. Definitely the pressing, the intensity, those 2 keywords that we all love were almost unrecognisable from what they've been serving up recently against the likes of Brentford and Brighton especially. Couldn't agree more with that. I think you're right as well. There's an element of not getting carried away, because we've had a few what I'd call false dawns this season, haven't we? A few results. Yeah. We're back. This is us. But, you know, in context, there's been the other side and what's followed. So, yeah, we've got to be careful around that. But definitely something to build on. I'd agree on that as well. One thing we normally ask, and we'll probably do it a bit differently because it's a cup game, because normally we ask, has anyone played their way in and out? Probably a bit difficult with a cup game, because a lot of people who maybe, if this is the right phrase, wouldn't be seen as first teamers. That may well change. We'll have to talk about that. But people that wouldn't necessarily be seen as first teamers. So it's more if anyone's, I suppose, played their way in, maybe especially on the back of some awful performances against Brighton. So probably just go through a few, Tom, because this might start to shape your team. We'll get a feel for what you're thinking. Yeah. Gomez at the back?
I think so. I haven't thought much of Matip's last 4 or 5 performances, and there's been a few this season that have been pretty bad. In you know, and to be completely blunt and honestly, there's been a few that are really bad. I thought Brighton the first half, he had a stinker in God's honest review. I didn't. I was watching it getting frustrated, even just little things, missing the ball, miscontrolling it, things like that. And I watched Joe the other day. It just seemed that bit more sure. It's nice to see him back at centre back. I think he's in a position now as well where he really needs to start playing for his future. So might be worth taking advantage of that added incentive he may have, or the chip on the shoulder he may have. I think he was good the other night, and I wouldn't have any complaints if he was starting tomorrow.
Yeah, looked solid and didn't actually make a great sort of block. You could call it deflector, but I thought it was a great block for that cross from Jimenez as well as what should, goal saving blocks. You're giving the benefit of the doubt there. This area, this is probably the one that's going to cause most discussion, and I suspect people are going to be screaming when they listen to this later, but we've got to talk about it. I called it midfield 3 on the agenda, but listen, anyone who doesn't have Thiago starting tomorrow needs certified, in all honesty. So we'll take him out of the discussion. That's quite straightforward. And naturally, it's the other two that played against Wolves who we've got to bring to the table. We mentioned it before, Wee Badge, talking like I'm his mate or something, but, absolutely brilliant. And Naby Keita as well. Yeah. Have they played their way in for you tomorrow?
Without going into what the lineup I would put out is, I would go unchanged. I just wouldn't fix anything that wasn't broken. Considering how the midfielders looked, I just don't see the issue in not changing. And to be honest, I just don't see the harm at this point. If it is, in previous years, you probably never have caught me wanting a young player with less than 10 appearances in a Liverpool shirt starting against Chelsea. But we're at that stage now where it's, why not? He was brilliant the other night. I enjoyed every bit of his performance, and he plays with a bit more of a composure and maturity beyond his years. So he's one of those players that I feel a bit more comfortable suggesting that he could start and should start. So, if it was me, I'd just go unchanged. I think, why not? I think Naby probably should be starting in our best team anyway. But it's obviously, the issues with him isn't really the talent, is it really? So, whilst it's working, just let's move with it and see how it goes.
Interesting. Fair enough. Yeah, I think especially with Badge, he's trying not to eulogise on the back of an FA Cup replay, but you could only, as they say, you can only beat the opposition that's put in front of you. But I thought his performance had everything. Like we said before, pressing intensity. I thought he won some great tackles. He rattled into a few, which I loved as well. He also, the one thing that did impress me, which can be difficult for a young kid, very press resistant. There was one... Yeah. I can't remember the minute.
The one where he dropped the shoulder when Keller played out to him. He put the guy on the floor just by taking a touch without touching the ball, basically.
100%. It was almost like, I've been watching Thiago in training now about to send Podence is getting sent for an echo about now. So that was absolutely brilliant. I thought, Naby as well, really, again, it's trying not to stake everything on one game, but based on what you've been seeing, like, the energy, linked it together, drove forward quite a bit. So, obviously trying not to say there's only one option potentially, because who knows? But there's a strong case for both. I suppose the only other player that I suppose I'd really think or came to sort of a talking point based on what you've seen on Twitter, Discord, and all those types of things. Harvey in the front line at all, Tom? Any shout have played his way in for you at all?
Based on, I'd say it all depends on Darwin's fitness. I know obviously Klopp said he's okay, he's good to go, he's training. Yeah. It all depends on whether he thinks he's fit enough to start. If he's fit enough to start, I start Darwin and with Mo and Gakpo. If he probably thinks I'm going to bring him on with 30 left to where once they're already kind of worn down a little bit, then I've got no real problem with starting Harvey on the right, maybe Mo through the middle, Gakpo on the left. And we've seen Harvey pop up on the left a little bit these days with some kind of in-game tweaks. So maybe sticks him out on the left if Darwin's not ready. So, he put in enough of a shift the other day to warrant a start, and I wouldn't be too mad about it. But especially as I'm not a massive fan of him in midfield, I don't think it's his natural position, obviously, and it kind of taps into the whole midfield, leaving the defence exposed thing, where it's just not his game. It's not something he's familiar with. So of course, you don't expect him to be N'Golo Kante or Moises Caicedo being able to drop into the little pockets and protect the back line. So, Harvey dependent on Darwin.
I don't need a VPN. I've got nothing to hide. This is what I used to tell myself before I hooked up with LibertyShield.com. Not only is my home internet now fully encrypted, but I can now access all the websites I want, whenever I want, and do so from absolutely anywhere. As a Liverpool fan, I love to know I can now watch every match, regardless of whether it's on UK TV or not. My Liberty Shield VPN makes sure nothing is blocked and guarantees me super fast streaming speed throughout that match. You can get connected right now with their software package, which includes a 48-hour no-obligation free trial and instant access to their apps for Apple, Android, Fire TV, PC, Mac, and Android TV. Or go a step further like I have and get one of their pre-configured VPN routers. These small but powerful devices allow you to easily connect every device in your home to VPN, making it the perfect solution for smart TVs, mag boxes, and games consoles. Visit libertyshield.com today and use coupon code AIVPN25 to get 25% off at checkout.
Fair enough. So we're almost calling Harvey number 12 there, so to speak.
Yeah.
But yeah, couldn't do any more, but I'd agree with that. Very, very different in a forward position, shall we say, to a midfield. So hopefully that tells Klopp another lesson, shall we say, from Wolves. But we will have to see. So moving on to Chelsea, I mean, just this season, what a club. Just everything that's going on there, just insane. So I think, as Klopp mentioned in the press conference, they are underperforming like us. He did mention about their injuries, similar to us, for key players. Seems like they've got more signings than points nowadays, almost. And from what we know, from obviously basically from Chelsea, that Mudrik's added, he is eligible. There's suspicion that Havertz is likely out. We'll have to see on that. If you're going to have to do a whole Chelsea squad, it's huge. But João Felix suspended. Kante, an interesting one, because we know he almost becomes the best player in the world whenever he has a game with us, was back in individual training. So a little bit of uncertainty. Yeah, well, we'll have to see with that one. If he does play, you know how good it'll be, because it's just the way it works. I mean, we look at Chelsea this season, it just seems everything's all over the place. I mean, they beat Palace at the weekend. They played 4-2-3-1. Potter has also played 3-5-2 in games. He's almost like, I say, flirted between formations, which is almost unusual for him because he was so set at Brighton. You knew what they were going to do, but hey-ho, it is what it is as well. And obviously a lot of the press conference, to be honest, was about Chelsea naturally. Potter, what he's got to do, the investment, transfers. And very interestingly, he did talk about Mudryk, on one wing with his speed, the good player, the campaign he's had in the Champions League, and João Felix on the other wing. I think he almost, like you said before, giggled to himself and then said, "Wow, about their talents." Yeah, I suppose thinking of this game, Tom, and we're linking it to who is available or how we might set up all those things. Is there any real threats or individuals you're thinking we need to keep an eye on him tomorrow from Chelsea?
I had a good think about this. I tend to watch a lot of Chelsea because my partner and all of her family, and I've got a couple of friends, they're all Chelsea fans, so I do see a lot of them. And as far from it, from an individual perspective, there's not anyone that does stand out to me as if like that guy scares me tomorrow. If he gets up against so and so, that's going to be a problem, sort of thing. I think, to be honest, the main thing that I go into it fearing, and the only thing that I can really kind of put my head together in terms of something that I'm a little bit worried about what the threat could be, and I think it's us. I think our biggest enemy tomorrow is going to end up being us and how we play. Because if we play like we did against Brighton, against Brentford, and our midfield just allows them to play between the lines, and if they're in any bit of rhythm where they can move that ball quickly and get in behind us, that's going to be the problem, regardless who's on the end of the pass or who's playing the pass. They're all talented players. So, I think it goes down to how we approach the game, and if we're Wolves, Liverpool, or Brighton, Liverpool, I think that's the biggest threat.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And I suppose the only other threats I picked up on were, again, Kante is always a world beater when he plays against us, and so is the other lad in midfield, the Croatian. Is it Kovacic? I think it's pronounced. Yeah. He always has a game against us. Always.
That was another thing I was going to mention, actually. It depends on the personnel, because I think I've seen Kovacic send Henderson for, like you mentioned, the proverbial echo a few times. Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah. I've seen that movie way too many times, and I think he tends to kind of be a fixture on the left-hand side of Chelsea midfield. Obviously, Henderson tends to be on the right, so they tend to have a fair few battles. So if that's something Klopp decides, if he puts Henderson out there and Kovacic out there, that could be an issue because I think he can. And I'm not. It's not so much a dig. Like, it's a little bit of a dig at Henderson, but at the same time, I think Kovacic is that good that he can drop the shoulder on anyone, and he can drive into space really, really well. Saw it in the World Cup, seen it countless times for Chelsea, and I think he's someone that if he's playing, then there needs to be not so much a game plan for that, but definitely some preparation in terms of how to deal with that, and need to make sure organisation and midfield's there to protect us from that sort of thing.
Indeed, yeah, I'd agree with that. And I suppose the only other, it's not a threat, probably the wrong word. I don't half hate a 12:30 kickoff. I've got to be honest. It always seems a bit like, it always seems a bit flat. It's not under the lights. It's not the 3 p.m. on Saturday, which we all love. Being honest, I can't remember many 12:30s that I've seen or been to where it's not just been a little bit flat for whatever reason. And so that's just the other thing, which, being honest, usually suits the away team a little bit more, doesn't it? So yeah,
later the game, the better for us for some reason.
Yeah, 100%. So we'll see what impact that potentially has tomorrow. I mean, we talked about their players there, maybe not so much threats as we said, but ones to keep an eye on. We talked about them almost flirting between formations. How do you think they'll actually set up tomorrow? What do you think they'll go like?
So my thinking initially was that they'll kind of build on their win last week against Palace. But from what I was having a chat with a good friend this morning who's a Chelsea fan and has his ear quite close to the ground on everything that's going on. And I've had a little bit of a look online, and everyone seems to think that they're going to revert back to the 3 at the back just to feel that bit more secure against a team like us. And I mean, I don't know how much of a difference it will make. I think a big thing for me tomorrow, I think, is Darwin. I think if we're able to set up the opportunities to put the ball in behind them and have him go after it with people like Thiago Silva, Chalobah, I think Koulibaly as well, I think he can cause them some serious problems. If we get him in the right areas and get the ball played into the right areas, I think he can cause a serious problem, whether it's 4 at the back or 3 at the back. But now I've spoken to people, definitely anticipate the 3 at the back, although wouldn't be surprised if Potter decides to just stick with what's working as of now.
Yeah, I might be wrong, but similar to you, I just get the feeling they'll go 3 at the back. Usually, again, because annoyingly, another player that has a great game against us, Thiago Silva, so suits well in a 3 for him to marshal it. I also think they'll have looked at Brentford, Wolves, games where we've really struggled recently, and think, well, how have they set up? 3-5-2, quick switches, overloads at the back post, that type of thing. That's where you get joy against Liverpool, when they leave gaps with their fullback, and dependent, again, particularly on personnel, when that energy is not there and, you're almost going straight through the midfield, so to speak. So, I do get the feeling they'll almost start as 3-5-2. Not hesitant, that's wrong, but keep it tight, try and make sure the crowd is silent, like we say, and then build from there and see what happens. But less than 24 hours, so we'll see what they do. I suppose bringing it back to us, and we've got a bit from you already, so we've got an idea of your sort of forward line. We know you're keeping the midfield the same, interestingly. I think that'll be quite a popular decision. You brought Gomez in there as well, and you've told us, Tom, that forward line, it's Gakpo, Salah and Núñez. The only switch being Harvey if, Darwin doesn't make it for any reason, although we've got no reason to believe that's not the case. And that's a double negative there, that's bad. But hopefully, fingers crossed, that's the case. Other positions, I might be guessing here and I shouldn't really. Is it going to be the standard, you think? Alisson, Trent, Robbo and Konate fill the rest of the gaps for you? Yeah, that's what I think. I think, like I said, I think the main decision is going to be that midfield, isn't it? Whether he wants to throw the captain back in, whether he wants to put Fab in for a bit more security, and then if Darwin's good enough to start, ready enough to start, then I think he will. I think he could be the key. I suppose the big question I've asked, and I've got to ask as we do this every week, I know you would start that same midfield 3. Do you think Jurgen honestly will?
What I think and Jurgen thinks tends to be quite different with the midfield.
Yeah.
I think from what he said today, he was asked about Bajcetic and whether he's someone that's kind of played himself into Klopp's thinking, and then he kind of turned the question back on them and said, no, he's always in my thinking. Like, he hasn't played himself into that. But I feel like he might give him the opportunity, given the performance the other day. Because and it's similar to what I said earlier. I think we're in a position that days. Why not? Why not just get the same three out there? You can change it on 55, 60 minutes if Naby's goosed because he hasn't had as many minutes. If Bajcetic just played himself into the ground with little first team experience, he can change it after 55, 60, and you've got people like Fab and Hendo who can come on and shore things up, who you might get a little bit more out of if they're playing not as many minutes and they're not being kind of ran flat into the ground for 90 straight.
True.
So I've got a feeling he sticks to it, but if he goes out there tomorrow with Fab, Henderson and Thiago, my jaw wouldn't drop to the floor in complete shock. So
yeah, it's a tough one. I'm going to get my tin hat on ready for this. I actually think from what he'll do, and I am, like you say, reading a bit into his press conference and all, I'm also thinking of certain things, like you say, we have to be careful on loading all this pressure on Badge because he had cramp, I think it was, after about 68 minutes the other day. It's a big ask to go again in a big game. But I get the suspicion there'll only be one change in the midfield. I do think, and I could be wrong, I do think Fabinho will come back in. I think Keita will stay, but I think it'll be Fabinho in the 6, Thiago naturally on the left 8, and I think Keita will stay on the right 8. That's what I honestly think.
The cramp bit has thrown a spanner in the moment. I completely forgot that he came off of it and he was cramping up. I don't know if that will have much of an impact into how he's feeling come tomorrow morning. But it's something to consider, that he might just kind of be just fatigued. So that might be. So I'll bear that in mind. That might be something to consider.
Indeed. I just get the feeling that is what will happen. And I also, like you said, I think as much as it's going to start with a midfield sort of 3, and we know it's going to be the 4-3-3. Nothing's going to surprise us that way. But I think it's that there'll be 5 midfielders at least, unless anyone gets injured, at least used. I do really get that feeling. It's that if it is that starting 3, then Henderson and Badge will have a role from the bench, like you said, just for fresh legs that way. But time will tell on that one. And dear God, just going to be honest, if it's Fabinho, Henderson and Thiago starting, just stay off social media and Discord for a while. That's the best advice I can give you, because it will go insane. And just for the record, that is not me endorsing that on this pod. That's just what could potentially happen. But we'll have to see. So the final topic I'm going to ask you, Tom. Currently, we're 1-1 on this for host versus guest. So as it stands, I got the point back the other week. No one got it. We didn't have one for Wolves, naturally, with it being midweek FA Cup. But it is beat the host. So we ask you for the final score and Liverpool's first goal scorer. Guest always gets first dibs as well. So, Tom, what are you going for?
I've talked myself into a different answer than what I've written down already. So I prepared and I've written an answer down, and I'm going to go against it completely. My prediction's 2-0 win.
Yeah.
I want to say Mo first goal scorer, but I feel like that's boring, so I'm going to say Darwin first goal scorer.
Darwin first goal scorer. And 2-0 would take that all day long. And
if it's any consolation, I had 1-1 initially, but I've talked myself into a bit of confidence, I think.
Interestingly, God knows what I've predicted if we hadn't got through against Wolves, but maybe it is just a bit of hope, or it could be getting carried away. Who knows?
Someone just as bad as us at the moment, so I think that's where it's at.
I think as someone said in the press conference, at the end of the day, this is 9th versus 10th, so it's not a big slug at the top of the table. So I will go 2-1 I think
Okay.
2-1. And if it's not Darwin, I'm going Mo for the first goal scorer. It's always going to be one of those two you're going to lean towards. So there we go, ladies and gents. Tom has gone 2-0 with Darwin as first goal scorer. I have gone 2-1 with Mo Salah first goal scorer. Let's be honest, we would take either one of those ones, and a win is a win at this stage. But, ladies and gents, that has been another post-conference presser for Chelsea. Fingers crossed, it's another 3 points that we're reflecting on the next week. But thank you very much, Tom. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
And we'll catch you all again soon.
We hope you enjoyed listening to this Anfield Index show. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel so future podcasts find their way to your device automatically. There's nothing quite like fan engagement, and we'd love to know what you think of anything discussed on this show. The best way to get in touch is over on our free Discord community, where both podcasters and listeners debate the hottest LFC topics 24/7. Sign up free now at AnfieldIndex.com/Discord. You won't regret it. You can also follow us on Twitter at Anfield Index and find us on Facebook by searching for Anfield Index. Oh, and before you go, we'd love it if you could leave us a 5-star review on your favourite podcast app. It only takes a couple of seconds, and it means the world to the people who create these free shows.